Hello and welcome to Back at Home. I'm your host, Patricia Duffy. On June 7th, a ceremony and parade will be held at the Casey Irving Center to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landing. It will be held at 10:30. And a formal rebadging of the 2nd Royal New Brunswick Regiment back to the North Shore Regiment will occur. In a lead-up to the event, we spoke with 3 Second World War veterans, 2 of whom are veterans of the North Shore Regiment.
How old were you when you enlisted, and why did you get involved?
20 years old. I was 20.
I was still going to school in May '43, and I went down to St. John and I joined the Navy. So I'm a sailor.
Well, I was 18 years old. I joined the North Shore Regiment on the 8th of June 1940.
So you guys all fought on D-Day, is that correct?
I did D-Day, yes.
Yep. What was it like for you?
Well, you mean getting off and going into the
Yeah.
coast of France?
Yeah.
Oh, it was pretty rough. Big seas, and we were in the landing craft infantry, heading into the beach, and a battleship firing overhead for protection, and it's a pretty. You couldn't hear yourself think even. There was just a fire and. Oh, she was I wouldn't want to go to it again. I don't think so.
Yourself? D-Day for you, what was that? What was that day like?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I was in the Navy, and D-Day was supposed to be June the 5th, and it was stormy out, so they had it June the 6th.
He's
That's
right.
why
Yeah,
it's June the 6th.
I remember that.
And our job in the Navy was to blockade one end of the English Channel so that no German elements could get in and out. And we were in, we saw that the troops got over to France, and I spent 4 months in the English Channel. And that's about it.
Sprague, what your memories of D-Day, what was that?
I wasn't in on D-Day operation. I was in Italy at that time. I went to Italy 5 months before the invasion. I was sent to Italy.
And what was that experience like for you?
Well, the invasion, Sicily had already been made. The first front I went into was that casino.
I've been told that the D-Day, anybody remember what D-Day is, what it stands for? I was told it stands for Designated Day. The troops never talked about when everything was going to take place. It was just D-Day.
What was that like for you to the first day, but then the continuation on following the landing?
Oh yeah, following. We had to go inland. You had to go inland and follow the action. I was knocked unconscious at one period, and they come to, the rest of them had gone, so another guy and I probably got up and followed them. We finally caught up to them in the village called Carperkey. We were there. I was wounded in the leg, in the side here. I went down again. It wasn't a very pleasant experience, I can tell you.
So you served in the Navy, but you fought in Sicily, you said?
Not Sicily,
Oh.
the mainland of Italy.
Oh, in Italy. So you guys wouldn't, like the two of you wouldn't have been cross paths?
Rauleigh and I were together for a while. I have the role here in this book. Raleigh's image is in my section.
Tell me about that. So you guys had served a little bit together then?
Yes, Rauleigh come to us, I say maybe about 43.
What company were you with?
I'm D Company. You were in my section. You're in this book.
D.
D Company.
Yeah, same here.
Same.
Yeah, D Company. Yeah.
And Raleigh's name is in here as well as mine. Sergeant Mern Sluice was killed on D-Day. Have a picture of him here.
My company commander used to be Richard Kermey in Bathurst there. He was a
Sergeant
mayor
Major.
one time.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of people when you came home that served in the same company as you?
Pardon?
When you came home, did you see a lot of the same people that served in the same company as you in the war?
Not too many. That I can remember. Some stayed over there under the ground.
Yeah. 270 of us.
Yeah.
Have you ever been back there, Raleigh?
No,
to France?
I have never been back.
I have the information on Raleigh here. G 7486, Private Ronalds, RS.
Yes,
Listed the 25th of November 1942.
Yeah.
He was 20 years old. He was single Roman Catholic, 5'8", 38-inch chest, size 8 boots, 7.5 headdress. His rifle number was 26L6097. His amount of money he sent home, he listed as a farmer, and he was a rifleman. I guess that covers you pretty well.
In Canadian history, the North Shore Regiment, it's pretty important. They have a lot of accolades.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
How do you feel as a person that served in the North Shore Regiment to know like that you made that big of a mark on Canadian history?
One of the worst things I can remember, and I never forgot, was a burial party I was on. People have been dead in Normandy for a week in the rain, and they were bloated up on the bodies, and they were all turned black. You know, after a week in rain and heat, it was a terrible rigor mortars are in all position. Section have helped to bury them. It's a terrible. I never forgot it in my head. The smell. Ugh, it's a terrible thing. You have to go through it to understand.
Is there one lasting memory, not just from D-Day, but from like all of the Second World War that you guys hold on to? Is there? I'm sure there is, but what's the one kind of memory, if you're to think about your time serving, that you hold on to?
Well, I think about some of the close friends I had. They're not. Some are dead. Some went to Ontario.
I remember the good times. Joining up, and I only was in a short while and landed in Bermuda, December. And another thing, we spent most of our time at sea, and go to sea for 3 weeks and come in for a week or less, and then back to sea again. And one of the highlights would be after sinking a submarine, we had to guard the prisoners on the ship, and we used a Sten gun, which is the equivalent of a 38. And we brought them to Ireland. When we were talked to them, they could understand us, but they couldn't speak any English. And they would point to the west and to the east. They wanted to go east because by going west they would land in England, and the English people didn't like the Germans at all. So they were scared about that. And another highlight was going down as far as the Mediterranean and climbing the Rock of Gibraltar. We walked up to the top of the rock and then got to drive down. And when we were up there, you could look one way and see Africa, and look the other way and you could see Spain. So other than that, it was pretty routine, just a job, attending, looking for submarines with spyglasses, and that's about all the highlights that I had in the Navy. And I had some good chums that I hung on to for a while, and now they're all gone, and there's only about 5 or 6 Navy veterans in Bathurst area right now.
Sprague, your lasting memory of your time serving in the Second World War? Like if you were to think of something that really stands out, what's the thing you hold on to?
Well, there's so many things because I was in the front lines for 17 months. And went through the Gustav line, the Hitler line, the Gothic line. Was in the fall of Rome where we met the Americans and the Americans went in. That was in the Gothic Gustav line. After serving a year in Italy, we got as far as Ravenna. It would be pretty well up to the hip on the right side. And we left there and we figured we were going to go over to help the Americans out because they're having trouble on the west side. But that wasn't so. We got landed back in down south in France, in England, Ireland, Italy. Then we started north. We come over the mountains, started north again, and we went towards the American front. But at Florence, we swung westward. And we landed up in Leghorn, Italy, where we boarded the landing craft and come to France. And from France, through France, Belgium, and Holland. And on D-Day, BE Day, I was in a place called Delfzijl, which was on the German border. And maybe our job was to liberate France from February on to the end of the war. The Canadians were to liberate France. Not France, Holland. And that was what the last town there was Delfzijl. So I spent another 7 months in Northwest Europe.
And Raleigh, after you had landed in Normandy,
Yeah.
what was the rest of the Second World War for you? Where did you go? Where did your company and where did you guys continue on to from the landing?
Yeah, we continued on. The Carpentier in Holland, in Germany. I was wounded and I was back in England for, I was wounded in July, the 4th of July. And they took me back by plane across the Channel to England, Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. I was there for a few months and I came back to the Red Meads just before Christmas. And had to continue on from there. We just followed everything and just quite an experience, I can tell you.
Now, Raleigh, did you fight at Carpentier?
Pardon?
Did you fight?
Wounded there.
I was wounded
That's
there.
where you were wounded, okay.
Yeah, I was wounded there, yeah.
Explain to me a little bit of that battle for you. Well,
we had a heavy barrage going down when we went in, and we were we got into the town and we're going along the street, and I remember the Germans began to counterattack with what they call the Monin Minis. The
Mortars.
electric, the Monin Minis, you remember?
Minis. Five failures.
Multiple rocket launchers,
Yeah.
that's what they were. And I was carrying a load of metal container with bombs to one of the positions. When they said hit the dirt, I got down, and I put the metal can beside me, and the shells are coming down, and there's an opening in the wall, and there's a stack of hay there, a big stack of hay. I started for the stay, and then I turned back, and one of their bombs hit the hay. She just the flames, went right up. And I laid down, and I remember a guy from. He's North Shore, you know him well, I forget the name, my memory's not good. He was hanging onto my heels. The shell came down and blew the case of mines I had right to pieces, and that's when the shrapnel went into my leg. That's how close you are to death there. You never know what's going to happen. And so when the brand let up, when they get back to company headquarters, I couldn't hardly get up because the blood was in my boot. And it run into my boot, and I was hobbling, and I said, give me a hand, but they never kept going. Well, I managed to get back, and Clinton Dam took one look at me. He said, you're going to have to send you out. And I never forgot those words. To send you out, and I had a rough ride on a Jeep with a stretcher on top of it.
Yeah.
What a rough ride. Oh, I never forgot that. You know.
And well, it's kind of I guess a tough question to answer, but when you were taken back to be worked, like to be helped out, when did you find out, I guess, how Carper K went? Like,
When did I find out?
yeah, like did you?
I can't remember when I found out, but I know it was taken. The village was taken by the North Shore. You call it the graveyard of the North Shore.
Graveyard, the North
Yeah.
Shore. Yeah.
An awful lot of casualties, killed and wounded.
And you were one of them.
I was one of them, yeah.
And when did you go back into service?
I think it was November.
Did you guys hear anything back from Canada, like while you were over there, or were you?
Oh, a few letters or something like that from her family. There wasn't too much
Relatives.
contact. I didn't write very much. I didn't.
Anyone else? Did you guys know really what was going on back home, or was it pretty isolated?
New guys coming in would tell us, the reinforcements coming in. They were coming in steady because we were being planted steady. They tell you what's going on back home, especially with conscription that was happening. That was a black mark. So besides that, only thing the guys that were just becoming of age were also conscripted after 1941. So we had a bunch of young fellas come into us in 43, shortly before the invasion. I was still at the North Shore in December 43 when I left for Italy.
When you weren't wounded, was it always fighting? Was it always taking on?
Not always.
enemy?
I wouldn't say always. No.
We come out to be reorganized, after a battle. We had to come out and reorganize. More ammunition, more vehicles, more men, more food. Food and ammunition was our main thing.
Some reinforcements will come up in the morning and they'll be dead at night. That's what happens to some of the poor fellows. I remember one guy who couldn't wait to get into action, and he was decapitated. I remember, never forgot that. Decapitated by a shell.
Continuing on that story, we had one of our officers, he was a new officer, in our last battle. He had never been in action, but he wanted to go.
Yeah.
He took in the leading company, he
Yeah.
was gone.
Yeah,
Lieutenant Nunn was his name, N-U-N-N.
that's what happened.
First day in action. He wanted to go with the leading
One of my
company. That was
memories
B
is,
company, was the
very
leading company.
is the time at sea. I spent 2 years at sea and slept in the hammock for 2 years. I still have the hammock. But it was routine day after day, and every mile was a danger mile.
Of course.
And
yeah.
we
Submarines.
traveled every day from 24 hours, because you never knew if a submarine was going to get you first or you were going to get them. And we had one fella in Ireland, he was a cook, and they took him off in a straitjacket. It was that nerve-wracking for him that he just couldn't take it. He was from Halifax.
Stress.
When you guys, like, history's written now, but when you guys were fighting, did you have a sense that, you know, you were making progress? There was a victory in sight, or was it just continuously not?
After the Americans come in the war, we progressed all the way, right from 1941 to victory. That was a big gift to us when they come into the war. They were into it, but it's called lease led, making planes, war machinery, food, doing everything. until they bombed Pearl Harbor, and then that brought them into the war.
So before Pearl Harbor, you guys were kind of getting a sense like you didn't really know if it was gonna be a victory.
No. Before the Yanks come into the war, we were looking at 100 years war. There's no sight of victory in sight, none. We lost 2 regiments in Hong Kong after Pearl Harbor. We had a tragedy at Dieppe. We lost a division, 2nd Canadian Division. 2/3 of them landed. After our Air Force beat the hell out of them in the air, in 41, there was no more bombing of England. Up until 39 to 41, was steady bombing London every night, weather permitting. Every evening we'd hear our planes going, 1,000 planes raid, headed for Germany. They blew up the Roer Dam, the Nipter Dam, and the Moen Dam, known as the blockbusters. That destroyed a lot of the industry on the Rhine River.
Did you feel that on the ground when the Americans came in?
I give them lots of credit, although a lot of people don't. There was no sign whatsoever of victory. Victory, yes, but when we're going home, no. No such thing as going back home. They played a big part. When they come into the war, they come into the, on the west coast of Africa. We were fighting with the British. We weren't, the Canadians weren't. Few Canadians. The British were fighting in North Africa, so they cornered them in and they headed out to Europe from the seaport of Tripoli. And they landed in Sicily. And that's when the Canadians come into, now this is 43, July 43.
And of course, they played a big part on D-Day.
Oh.
On D-Day.
Oh, I guess.
And that brings me back to you, Rauleigh. And when you were getting ready, you knew that this was what you guys were going to have to do.
Yes.
What was your thoughts like? What was your other fellow soldiers like, thinking we're going to have to do this?
I suppose you hope for the best, because it's the first time we never went through that before. You didn't really know what to expect, but except something tough. And the Germans had a division against the 3rd Canadian, the Hitler Youth Division, the 12th SS. Remember that, the Hitler Youth?
Hitler Youth.
Yep. They were real devils, those fellows. They murdered Canadian prisoners.
5 of them.
Yep.
From
in Normandy.
Novice.
The real Nazis. But an ordinary German soldier, I suppose, like the rest of us. But she was not a very bad bunch to come up against. Okay. I remember one time in the army, they had a German prisoner, and he was in a slit trench, and he wouldn't come out. I was there, and I watched this. They tried to get him, and he wouldn't come. They'd throw a hand grenade in, they'd throw that back out. Yes, I've seen that.
4-second fuse.
So they brought up a tank and they put it in, they shot him in the arm. Yeah. I was right there. They were dedicated, I tell you. The Waffen SS.
We had the same thing happen in the Navy when the submarine came to the surface, and they put a carly float, it's like a canoe, and one of them got in, and he was, and he was paddling away, and we said, come on this way, come on. And he said, no. He wasn't going. So our ship speeded up and started away from him, and he changed his mind.
Was there one guy in your company in particular that you have a memory of that he was just above and beyond, or?
I thought the world of my sergeant. Mern Sluice, he was killed on D-Days.
Yeah, he was my sergeant.
He was your sergeant.
Yeah. He was killed on the beach.
Rough waters.
What was it about him, Sprague, that you...
He was a leader.
Yeah.
Could control men and joke played with them, everything.
Couldn't wait to get in action. I remember him. Couldn't wait.
And you said he was killed on D-Day?
He's from our fathers over here.
Killed on D-Day, on the beaches.
Yeah, killed on the beach. He's
Trying
right.
to take out a machine gun. Him and Brigadier Anderson.
Hmm?
Brigadier Anderson was a major at that time.
Yeah.
He come through, and he come to Bathurst every reunion. And he would take the salute at the monument. And he died. He worked a job in Fredericton after the war, and he died in Fredericton. I've been back several times to overseas. On one of my trips, his son was with us.
You've gone on those trips, where they go over to Normandy?
Yeah, all these year trips. No, these year the trips I've been back.
What's that like to go back in peace?
This one here I have to mention it. This is the graveyard of the North Shore, which Rauleigh spoke about.
Carpenter.
Capricorn.
Yeah, this is
70 killed and 170 wounded. Now, I brought this up at our reunion one year, and their count was 40 killed and about 70 wounded. I have 100 more. They count one day. Capricorn was more than one day, just a week long.
They called it graveyard of the regiment.
Called the graveyard of the North Shore Regiment. And that's not too far at the airfield that they're trying to capture.
On the anniversary, what do you guys think about? Like, do you think about the battles, the people you knew in the service, or?
I attended all the reunions. And very few attends now. The last couple of years we had none from Campbellton, none from the Mercy. We had 3 from Nova Scotia, and that's about it. One of them guys from Nova Scotia is going over this week with the Prime Minister. He's going to be in there to Haviland Shessam from Bathurst. Well, really from Misco, but enlisted in Bathurst.
Well, that's our show. On June 7th, go out and support our troops past and present at the 70th anniversary of D-Day and the formal rebadging of the North Shore Regiment. It takes place at the Casey Irving Center at 10:30 a.m. I'm Patricia Duffy. Thanks for watching.